Hey, what's up? I'm Jay Moss, and today we're going to look at Kaleidoscopes, a brand new modulation plugin from Waves Audio. Kaleidoscopes is based on some really classic vibrato and modulation processors, ranging from the 1940s all the way through the late 1970s. We've got coveted classics like the Diarman 601 Tremolo Control from 1941, the Fender Tremolux and Vibrolux from the 50s and 60s respectively, the old Eventide Instant Phaser module from 1972, the MXR Phase 90 from 1974, which is a total classic on everybody's pedal board, the Eventide Instant Flanger, and the Boss Chorus Ensemble, both from 1976, and lastly, the MXR Phase 100 from 1977. So when you think of Kaleidoscopes, think of the Beatles in the 60s with their tape flanging, or rockin' guitar solos from the 70s with that awesome vibrato. So while having all of these classic sounds at our fingertips is super helpful, super convenient, and super powerful, we have a few extra tricks up our sleeves as well. Kaleidoscopes features something called the dual cascade engine, which means we have two effect slots of which we can cascade our first effect into our second effect, creating almost unlimited variety in our modulation and our tremolo soundscapes. We can also use internal sidechaining to trigger our modulation effects from a different source entirely. Or we can use the pre-existing wave shapes, we can use signals from inside our DAW, or we can even trigger it from live performance. Now that we've talked about what Kaleidoscopes is and where it came from, why don't we fire it up, pull up some examples, have some fun with it, and see what it can do. Okay, so one of the first things I want to show off is actually a subtle effect that you can do with modulation that a lot of people would use reverb for, or maybe delay or something like that. One of the most essential parts of recording drums are the room mics. And occasionally you don't have enough channels, or you're receiving a mix and you only get one room mic. I really like my room mics to have some stereo depth to create that more immersive three-dimensional feel. So I'm going to go into Kaleidoscopes, I'm going to select the doubler preset. We might modify it just a little bit, but we're going to see how quickly and easily we can totally save a mono room mic and create a better overall, more encompassing stereo drum sound. Okay, so why don't we start by listening to this room mic. It's a single mic that's in front of the kit, and it sounds really good. I really want to use it in the mix, but I don't love that it's mono. So let's have a listen. I definitely think that sounds more exciting, but the phasey artifacts I don't think are appropriate for this application. So I'm gonna try a different preset. This one's called Subtle Doubler, and I think it'll do just what we want. Yeah, like I said, sonically, that's totally there, but let's see if we can enhance this. I'm gonna turn Kaleidoscopes on, and there's a preset I really like for this, and it's called Subtle Doubler. It might be a little bit phasier than we want right off the jump, but I think with a little bit of tweaking, we're going to get this to a really nice place. The subtle doubler combines some chorus, as you can see here, and that cascades into the phaser, which we have here. Let's listen to this as it stands. So right away, that sounds way better. It's a lot more exciting. In terms of its stereo movement, we hear a little phase shift from side to side, but that doesn't bother me. I think in the context of the overall drum mix, that'll actually be really good. One thing I'm hearing that I kind of want to adjust is I kind of want to open up the top end of this a little bit. This preset, while sounding great, did make it a little bit darker. So we're going to go to our output low pass filter section, which is located right here, and we're just going to turn it up a little bit. Hear how the hi-hats start to come back in that really nice way. I'm going to start to lower the depth of the phaser a little bit to reduce the modulation, and then we might play with the mix knobs just a little bit to see if we can get this feeling just right. I'm going to reduce the width by just a small amount so it sounds a little bit less like the drums are shifting back and forth. Okay, and let's revert back to the original just to sort of refresh our brain. And now with Kaleidoscopes on. I really like that. Let's try turning on the sync so that we can get our sync speed lined up to the actual tempo of the song. For something like this where I want a more subtle effect, you're going to see me trend towards lower speeds. I don't want this rapid movement from right to left. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to slow my speeds down. I'm going to slow my depth down a little bit. It doesn't take a lot to make this mono room mic sound stereo and more exciting. This is one of those moments where a little bit goes a very long way. One more time, without and then with. And with. That was really easy and honestly really fun. I can totally see myself tailoring this to the exact part when I'm doing my mixes to create excitement and depth that just wasn't there before. All right, so why don't we move on to guitars now, and we'll have some fun with this. We'll do something a little bit less subtle. Okay, I want to show off these guitar parts real quick. They're really cool. You can almost see it right in the waveform. This guitar part has some tremolo built in. We're going to hear that. And this one has some modulation. But why don't we listen to these guitars real quick right now, whereas they have, no kaleidoscopes on them whatsoever, and we'll use that as our starting point. Sounds good. Yeah, so as you can hear, we do have some tremolo here. We have some modulation here. Now let's use kaleidoscopes on the group to sort of intermingle them in the stereo field, if you will, and see what we can come up with. I'm going to solo these, and we're just going to start with default, and we're going to move around just a little bit. Cool, let's try another one. Ooh, I like that one a lot. I think a lot of times we only really think about effects in their singular purpose, like, okay, this is chorus, this is delay. But in this instance, I'm gonna show you what cascading these things does together when we combine all of the modulation effects, combined with some of the EQ. We're really gonna clean these guitars up as well as expand on them in a sonic spread encompassing sort of beautiful way. You know what? I really liked this disco guitar preset here. One of the reasons I liked it is because it cleaned up some of the low mid-range stuff that I was hearing in the guitars that was feeling, I don't know, just a little bit too warm, a little bit boxy. And I think what's happening is that these different character models have a lot to do with the EQ curve of the output. And we're going to get into that more later, but I just wanted to kind of put that in your head. So as we're using this, just know that's a fact. And let's listen to the bypass, and then we'll listen to disco guitar. All right, now let's turn it on. Listen to the effect, but also listen to the EQ curve. Hear how that feels kind of lighter? It's really nice. I'm a big fan of this. Why don't we put this in the mix and see what it sounds like? Okay, so we've played with some room mics and we've played with some guitars using just presets and kind of modifying them. This time we're gonna go with no presets whatsoever. There's something I wanna show you and something I want to accomplish when we use kaleidoscopes on the full drum sound. The first thing I wanna show you is by using the different character modes, we can completely change the sonic signature of the drums. We can make them kind of huskier with a little bit more lower mid-range, or we can kind of scoop them and make them a little bit more modern. On top of that, I also wanna use the tremolo effect to give this sort of like 80s gated reverb vibe. And you can do it just on the entire drum track. You don't have to use gated reverb. You can use the tremolo effect, and I'll show you how we can make this pa, pa sound. It's really, really cool. First thing I want to do here is sort of go through these character models and show you all of the different EQ shapes we have here. Those all sound really good and really usable. I kind of like how character model 1 gives this really big fundamental low end, instead of sort of like a consistent and static modulation like you're used to on your pedal board, which doesn't really take into account your performance. This is really cool because this is saying, hey, I'm listening to the performance and I'm going to adjust the modulation based on what's actually happening. And the beauty of that is it makes the modulation feel very, very musical. It feels very integrated with the music, which I love. All right, I'm gonna hit play and start cranking the sensitivity knob, and you should hear these snares start to jump out of the mix. This upper display is super useful because as I turn the sensitivity knob up, we can actually visually see how we're expanding the dynamic range of the drums. That's a really cool and unconventional trick. That's not the type of thing that you're gonna hear very many people talk about, but if you're having difficulty getting the transient out of your average volume drum sound, you want more snare, you want more kick, this is a very different but effective and cool way to get that done. All right, and lastly, I wanna move on to vocals. It's always fun to play with vocals, especially with effects. Now, of course, you wanna sort of make it appropriate to the song, but I think the outro of this song just has this awesome opportunity for us to get in there and get kind of weird. So let's dig in. We're gonna hear a bunch of different presets. It's always great to just sort of jump through presets. Never feel bad about doing that, because why not have a sort of inspirational starting point as sort of like your jump off point, and then you can just totally tweak from there.
All get destroyed, let it 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 all get destroyed, all get destroyed, let it all get destroyed, let it all get destroyed, let it all get destroyed.
See, this is what I'm talking about when I'm talking about using effects to creatively benefit the composition. Here the vocalist is saying, let it all get destroyed, let it all get destroyed. In the meantime, us as the mixing engineers, we're like, yeah, sure thing, man, let's go for it. So I'm gonna automate this stuff, and I think we're gonna make it really, really crazy by the end. I think that's a pretty cool cap to show how powerful and easy and fun this plugin is. So here we go, let's finish up. So as you can see, we have our 2 mix automation lanes now. I'm going to scroll up and find the end of the passage. Boom. So somewhere right around here seems like a good time to stop. And I'm just going to go sky high with the mix until we get to that point, and then we'll drop back into the normal mix before the next vocal right here. What these lines represent is basically how much effect is being applied to the left and the right channels respectively. I'm going to go ahead and delete the extra points. And on top of that, I'm going to add an exponential curve here. Boom, so that these effects start kicking in pretty early. This is by no means a final mix, but this is a great way to audition, getting kind of crazy with it. Okay, so now as I hit play, we should see these mix knobs move on their own based on the automation curves that I just created.
All get destroyed, let it 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 all get destroyed.
And that might not necessarily be to your taste, but I kind of think it's a pretty cool look. Like, just using this wildness at the end of the song that already has this sort of like chorusy and neat like throwback vibe. I figure, why not? The worst thing that can happen is that the artist hits you back in the mix notes and says, maybe not. But I personally think it's really great. So I'm sold. This is a really cool and creative and most importantly, fun plugin. It takes all of those classic sounds that we grew up hearing on our favorite records. It puts them at our fingertips, and we can create new things out of probably effects you don't use as much as you think. While it's so cool, like that we have a million different API 550 EQs, or that we have all these compressor emulations, and those have their place and we use them every single day. It's awesome to get my hands on something that is really just made for creativity and for having fun and expanding what we can do with records. So having said that, check it out. It's awesome. I had a blast with it. I'm Jay Moss, and I will see you next time.